Hitchhiker beam out of commission, or this is going to be a real short trip. Okay, hit it!
Hello, everyone. How's it going? Hopefully, we have some more people tonight since we're earlier, and we decided to advertise it a little earlier, right? Say, Jason?
Yeah.
We got two. That's more than the last time.
Well, like I said before, the other, the last few we were jumping on randomly on, 10 o'clock on a Tuesday night or 10:30 on a Wednesday. So I wouldn't expect too many people to be available for that. But
how you doing, man?
Good, doing good.
Yeah, everything good.
All right. Yeah,
it's been a minute since we've been on a show, hasn't it?
It has. Yeah, it has.
Yeah, I think the last one was with John. That was a fun one.
That was.
We're gonna have him again very soon. Actually, he's got some real cool stuff to talk about, and he's a fun one to have on the show. Look forward to that. But yeah, like as usual, we don't really have anything specific we want to talk about, but we just figured, what the hell, we'll get on, get some content, talk some studio sale. There's a couple people who like talking studio scale, and in our group. Get a little bit of good feedback, on both my build videos and these, because, there's a lot of people that like studio scale now. It wasn't as, let's say, popular back maybe a year ago.
Correct.
But now it's everywhere, which is kind of a little bit what I'm kind of thought about talking about tonight, because, like you and I, like a year ago, there wasn't hardly any talk about studio scale. There were a few people, but a lot of it was like behind the scenes, people, friends talking to each other more so than like out there in TV land, but what seems to be happening a lot is now a lot of the same people are making the same things. And that's kind of a little bit of what I wanted to start on to begin with, and it kind of ties into what you and I are working on as well.
Yeah.
I just want first of all, let's just say hi. Hi, John. Thanks for joining us. We got 6 people. Sweet. Robin, it's been a minute. How you doing? Good to see you again. How's Benjamin? Tell him we love him. C2. Oh, that's Chris Lawson. How you doing, man?
Hey, Chris, how's it going, man?
Dude, this guy hooked me up. I'll get into that a little bit more. I can't say too much about it, but Chris reached out to me at Clear Blue and just offered to help me with something that he heard about, and man, very much appreciated. And that's kind of like the studio scale community got kind of a bad rap because of all the infighting a little bit, right?
Yeah, it was very it was a very gray area in the studio scale community for numerous reasons. I wasn't just all the sort of the fighting amongst, but there was just a lot of I just want to be careful with my terminology here, but
we don't want to step on that,
like holding things close to the chest. People, and again, we've talked about this ad nauseum, right? But you have to take into consideration that in this particular venue of collecting and piecing things together, you have people that are investing not hours or days, we're talking years, some over a decade, in discovering and figuring out and try to reverse engineer these pieces. So with all due respect, and rightfully so, I can understand some of the secrecy and some of the frustrations and some of the, this is mine and I don't want you to have this, etc. Because, it's no different than, it's no different than, let's say, like if you were to go to work, right?
Yeah.
That's time you'll never get back, and to spend all that time and just hand it over to somebody else for basically nothing. And that's the thing, right? It's like, well, do I owe you something for that? Is there a quid pro? It's, again, we can go on and on and on. We don't need to,
but again, Jason, in the beginning, we didn't understand it either. We're like, why don't these people tell us these things? Like, what's the big deal? Like, we were new, we were naive.
Yeah,
we had a lot of confusion, and even a little bit of not resentment, but just like, damn, why can't we? Why can't we get into these, friend groups and try to find out stuff that we are dying to know, And we got to know a few of them gradually, and what ended up happening was not that they didn't want to share things with us. More so they wanted us to learn how to do it on our own. Like I would ask somebody specific, hey, do you know this part? Yeah, I think I might. Let me look into it. And he probably knew exactly what it was, which is fine. But I also think that he wanted me to put the time in, learn how to do it, do it for myself, which is a lot more gratifying than just being handed me a parts map.
Oh, it is. I have to say that's a good point you made, right? Because it's the whole like teach a man to fish.
Yes.
And at first I was the same. I had not resentment, but I had like a lot of frustration and a lot of confusion. I wasn't understanding why I was hitting so many roadblocks. But then, as you mentioned, when it was one of those things where it's like, okay, well, I'm now left with no option than to figure this out myself and learn this on my own. Yeah. At that point, I think we had sort of worked something out in a way where it's like, hey, if it's not going to be done for us, then we have no other choice than to move forward. And I honestly am so grateful that it took place that way, because I look at the work that I do now and I look at some of the pieces that I've completed now, and I think would I have been able to do this if I just, hey, here you go, here's this, here you go, here's that. You
don't appreciate it as much.
That too, there would be a lack of appreciation for sure, but I don't even think I would have rised to the skill level that I have or achieved what I have if I didn't have to, if I wasn't pushed to have to go in that direction and do it myself.
So Jason, let me give you a little. So as most people know, I have triplet boys. I have 3 sons, and as well, I've told you many times, they're very different. Like completely different spectrums. They're all boys and they're all the same age and they came out at the same time, but they're very different. So one of them, things come to very quickly, very easily, like he just gets it without much effort. One of them works really hard to figure it out and do things on his own. And one of them likes things being given to him. Like he likes, I'm talking specifically schoolwork. I'm talking specifically knowledge and schoolwork, and he will go to the other two and kind of get aggravated with them because they won't tell him, where they're trying to more so let him learn on his own, because they're not doing him any good by just saying, hey, this solve this and you get 58%, right? It doesn't do any good, just like us. Like, it really doesn't do us any good if you're just like, hey, here's the part map. Here's how you build it. Here's, and granted, it does take a lot of looking at kit scans. It takes a lot of, actually, I know a lot of people like to look at kit scans, but I obviously, most people probably too, I find more parts by having them in my hands, like just by going through the boxes and saying, oh, this is on slave 1, this is on the ATST, this is, and then, and me, I have the worst memory in the world, right? Yeah. I my wife will tell you that, my kids will tell you that, my parents will tell you that, but I can remember this little square comes from, Ferrari 312T. You know what I mean? It's just it's pretty terrible, actually, to be honest. But like I appreciate that these guys kind of forced me to learn this stuff on my own rather than just handing it to me. And you know what? Like, some people, they don't want to, but they don't want to dive into kit scans, and that's fine. That's completely fine. But when these people put in tons of work and tons of time and tons of like driving past highway exits, like, then you got to kind of understand why they don't want to just hand it to you. And I think that's what kind of gives it a bad rap, because like, like Matt always says, he's like what he just like, fuck it, if I don't like, if it's not, he doesn't really want to dive into the history or the thing, or the, like, he would never get involved in this whatsoever. But I find it so interesting to, like, we mentioned it today, just in our conversation today. Your wife finds it fascinating, which I do as well, which, blew me away in the beginning, that, the Millennium Falcon is not just a Millennium Falcon ship. It's made up of tanks and car parts and a lot of, like, in all honesty, I learned that maybe a year and a half ago myself, and I've been collecting for 35 years, so, like, it's truly that was the most fascinating thing that happened with Studio Scale with me. Your wife was saying the same thing today, wasn't she, Jason?
What was that about?
About figuring out that these ships are made of, kit parts and
yeah, the fact that you take for granted when you when you watch Star Wars or any movie, right? It could be Star Trek, it could be Battlestar Galactica. You look at these ships and you just, okay, it came out of somebody's imagination and it's a ship. What you don't realize is it's a juxtaposition of boats and army tanks and airplanes and sports cars. And when you really take into consideration the complexity of that, it there's a step back that you take, like this aha moment that really hits. And I think for those that really get into the studio skill stuff, not just someone who purchases it and appreciates it as a Star Wars piece, but for those who do like sort of that obsessive compulsive, searching, the researching, because that part lends itself to more of the joy and pleasure in the studio skill aspect than the actual build. A lot of builders will tell you it's the build and the research and the learning that is the process, not
the collection
finished piece. Yeah, not the displayed piece. And that's not taking anything away from somebody who,
for me, it's
wants
both.
to buy something. Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, well, I mean, for most it's both. I'm just saying there's plenty of people who just, want a specific ship. They want to put it on display and enjoy it. But then there's, the process of figuring everything out that goes from, point A to point B and how you got there. And I mean, that's something that I never expected. But once I started, man, there's things I never thought. If you asked me a year and a half ago, do you think you would have known this or been able to understand this or figure this out? I would have been like, there's no way. And then now it's like some of the stuff is second nature.
Yeah, especially with my mush memory. It's like I would have never thought I would figure this stuff out on my own ever. Which brings me back around to the kind of like bad rap that studio skill community gets. I mean, Matt used to say it all the time that I don't want nothing to do with that like community whatsoever, right? But going back to Chris Lawson, right? Just texted me out of the clear blue, hey, I heard your show. I wanted to help, this and that. And I'm like, yeah, he's like, thanks, bro. I mean, I really appreciate it. And I'm finding more of that recently than I am the opposite end, right? And Chris asked me, he's asking me to look at his work, and he's done a couple of nice pieces, and they look great. And he's asking for constructive criticism, which I gave him some, and but like sometimes I feel like, dude, I'm still an amateur. Like I'm not an expert whatsoever. Like I feel weird sometimes giving some advice because like I just started this a year ago, right? And like I don't ever want to like put myself out there as an expert because there are some guys. Okay, let's put it this way. John. Okay, like John. When I'm complimenting him, like I really do love his paint. I think he's a brilliant artist. I really do. And he just says, dude, stop saying that to me. Like, I don't want to hear that. Like, it's so hard for him to hear this. And like I said before, I look at his stuff as like up here. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I like I said, there was a lot of bad juju going on back a little while ago, but I feel like it's starting to get a little bit better. I at least I hope so. I think so.
I think there's definitely some. I think there's definitely some sun at the end of the
yes.
being one of the gray skies. And another thing I noticed is even in the last not like 5 years, even the last year from early 2021 to today, which is close to a year and a half, there's been a significant increase in interest. And
oh my God.
What I thought was interesting was I mentioned this to you. I had a conversation with somebody, and something was being sold not too long ago, and they were popping up in multiple collections, and they were fantastic pieces. They were beautiful pieces, and I had spoken to somebody, and they said, "Hey, I had done one of these just 3-4 years ago." He's like, I couldn't give these away if I wanted to.
Yeah.
And at the time, like, no, just the interest outside of that small niche community wasn't there. Now, I mean, collectors are still maybe chasing down some master replica pieces, or you had people who specifically into, like looking for the EFX X-Wing or whatever it may be, but it was always a very niche, small bubble of builders / collectors, right? And they all knew each other. And it's still like that to this day, where some of them are like, hey, if I'm going to do this deal with you, like, who do you know in the modeling community? Which I think is interesting. But to see the injection of interest and the increase of interest has been fantastic. And to also see like that people are getting more involved, people are getting, more enthusiastic and more ambitious, people are getting more curious. And I just found it, not funny, but interesting when that person said, hey, like I couldn't give these things away 3 years ago. And I was like, well, if you had done that same thing today, you would probably have 20 people knocking at your door.
Oh yeah.
It's
20 people plus a wait list.
Plus, yeah. And it's just gotten to that point where it is, there has been a bit of a transition.
But even look at this, Jason, let's talk about MIC, right? They were strictly statue makers for years, right?
Correct.
And Michael saw that everybody wanted these ships, so what does he do? He starts making a whole bunch of ships, and putting a bunch out, and people are selling them out. You know what I mean? It's like there's so much more interest now, which is it's a little surprising to me that there hasn't been as much of an interest in the vehicles before. Because honestly, like you think about it, the vehicles in Star Wars are right up there with the freaking characters. Like there's just so many and so many different variations and so many cool things. Like think about what Star Wars would be without, all the different AT-ATs and Millennium Falcons and this and that. You would have an Enterprise, you would have a Romulan ship and maybe a Klingon bird, and that's it, right? So
yeah,
like Star Trek has they have a lot more ships. I'm just joking. But when I think of Star Trek, I don't think of all these different vehicles. Star Wars it's a lot of different vehicles. It's a lot of characters. It's a lot of worlds. It's a lot of weapons. It's just, and it's surprising that that little section of the story has been neglected for so long. I mean, really, we haven't seen this kind of interest in the vehicles since Master Replicas, right? There really hasn't been. And you have your groups like RPF and stuff like that. But for the most part, the masses haven't really paid attention to the ships. You know what I mean? Correct me if I'm wrong. I may be wrong, but I think
No, I think you're right. I think a good term is the masses, right? Because there's going to be
yes.
plenty of people who will pop up and be like, "Hey, I've always been interested," or "I've had this," or "I collected that." But those people that are speaking, you have to realize you're part of a, compared to those who are doing, you know, lightsabers or, statues and, other things. So I'm getting a bunch of messages in the group.
Yeah,
It's throwing me off a little bit.
It's CC.
Yeah, they're bombarding me. Sorry about that.
Yeah.
I apologize. But you're right. The ships make up a very, pivotal. They play a very pivotal role in the Star Wars universe, and yeah, they're just. Part of me thinks like it's one of those like what came first, the chicken or the egg, right? So I always think like, okay, there are those who were interested, but the ones who had the strongest interest were the ones that were curious and creating and building and making these things. The collectors weren't necessarily picking up on it, weren't necessarily fully into it, and it was just one of those things where like, okay, did enough interest come, did enough like interest come forth where like it started to because like NYC for example, that was a good thing to bring up. You're only going to make something if the demand is there, right?
Yeah.
2 years ago the demand wasn't there, hence statues. Now you're building something and the demand is there. So like we're seeing a lot more of that, and it's just it's really unique to see where it's going to go, and how much bigger it's going to get, because so many more people that weren't responding to it a few years back are now responding to it in a much more ambitious way.
So Robin says here, maybe more finished products becoming available is driving the interest. Yeah, I definitely think that is helping it, but like kickstarting that interest is what kind of like makes me wonder, like what sparked that interest, like like kind of not really what sparked that interest. What I was wondering though is like what Robin says here was the fact that there was no product out there, like EFX is killed that whole, they never made any ships. They advertised them at San Diego Comic-Con like 10 years ago or something like that. It never happened unless you had $15,000 for a Star Destroyer, custom. Is that also like why the interest wasn't there? Because it wasn't out in front of people's faces. They just you could get Hasbro ones, right? And granted, now a lot of Hasbro ships they're not perfectly detailed,
but they're nice. They're nicely done.
They're nicely done, and they're pretty close. Whereas you go back to like the old Power of the not the original Power Force, but the Hasbro Power of the Force, the green carded stuff, like the original, like in the, let's say 2000s, those ships weren't the detail that they are now. Like the vintage collection that I'm looking at right now, like they used scanned kit parts to put on there. Did the fact that EFX held the license and didn't produce anything keep it the demand down for it? I can't say. It probably is partially the reason why, but I gotta say, like, I'm very happy that kind of let's say 50-50 happy. So I'm happy that it's more prevalent and out there, and but I'm worried. This is what I'm worried about. You have a lot of different makers doing a lot of different of the same things.
Same thing, yeah.
Yes, it seems like, and there's hundreds. I wouldn't say hundreds. There's tons of ships in Star Wars, but for some reason, it just seems like they're all making the exact same the same ATSTs at the same time. They're making the same this at the same time. I don't know if there's a reason for that, but it's a little weird that it happened. And even us, you and I, like we're diving deep into, you did before, but I just recently started diving deep into to scratch building in ATST, which I built a resin kit about a year ago, and I liked it. I thought before I built it, I was like, I like an ATST. I think it would look cool. But after I built it and had it sitting on my shelf, and even though it was already sold and going to somebody, I was looking at it. I'm like, I remember telling you, I said, I've got to have one of these on my shelf. I knew back then I was going
Yeah,
to
we talked about it. Remember, so this is a
mm-hmm.
fun and interesting piece.
Mm-hmm. It really is, and it's a blink and you miss it. Like, okay, so I'm just gonna bring up this picture, right? So give me 1 second to find it here. And it's a blink and you miss this thing, right? That's the shot of it in Empire. And
Well,
if you remember,
you
yeah,
remember
I remember.
group
I was
therapy,
about to say
right?
that. Yep.
I
Group
think
therapy.
Steve
It
had
was,
said, "Well, what scene or what movie is that from?" And we
yeah.
said it's the Chicken Walker. And I think here's a funny thing, right? Because we talk a lot about the sort of subliminal aspect of Star Wars. The brown versus the blue coat. Is the probe droid brown or black? It's one of those things where everybody knows the Chicken Walker not from the scene, but they know it from the Kenner toy.
The Kenner toy.
You know what I mean? So
yes,
because they promoted it as the Hoth ATST as well as the Return of the Jedi version, they just didn't distinguish the size of the heads, so everybody knows the Chicken Walker is the Chicken Walker. But in this scene, yeah, if you sneeze or blink your it's done. The scene is 2-3 seconds.
It's like walks right across, not even 2-3 seconds. I'd say it's like 1, maybe and a half.
It's a blurry shot too. I mean, this is probably the cleanest image I've seen. And what's even better, because it was such a blink and you miss it shot, the real studio scale version of this versus the idealized, this is actually unfinished. The opposite side that you don't see actually is marked with marker, and it says off camera, and it's unfinished. It's not complete. It's not fully built like the other models.
Yeah, there's no kit parts. Well, there's a few, but not very many.
A couple on the top leg, but yeah.
Let's see if I can find that. There's a picture. This is the Chronicles. This is the Chronicles vehicles book. So there's the opposite side, and it doesn't have a lot of. Well, it has this, but it doesn't have like this chin piece here or the.
It's not like mirror imaged.
Yeah, and then like even down here, there's. I don't know if I can if it's on here or not, but
just I think the top of the leg has parts, but the rest going down doesn't on the other side.
Now, when you got yours, you and I talked about it a bunch of times. Do you keep it true to the actual model, or do you idealize it and add all these parts, corresponding parts, as the other side, right?
For this particular one, that's a real tricky question because not many models. I mean, you have Pyro and you have Hero, right? But not many models were half finished just to get them on the screen.
Yep. So, and you decided that you're going to keep yours true to the model, right?
Yes.
Whereas I'm struggling. Okay. I normally I would be like, yeah, I want to keep it true to the model. I would like Slave One. I wanted it down to what it was, the scratch or the stain, like it just was. But this, like, I really want to do it both sides, and there's no wrong way to do it. Like, you can do whatever the hell you want. It's your model. You can do whatever you want. If somebody wants to tell you otherwise, shame on them, right? But I remember looking at the one I built for Costa, and it had both sides, and it was so cool to pose it like dynamically, and you could do that with this, but it does, if you have one side finished, you're always going to get like, well, why didn't you finish the other side? Like it's, but the funny thing is, like the red jammer, okay, John's red jammer. I look at it and it's not finished. One of the engines is partially finished. The original prop is, one side's finished and one side's barely finished. I love that. Why do I love that? And struggle with this.
See, that's interesting. That's really interesting because, like you said, there's no right or wrong reason, right? And for some reason, with me, I like the idea of keeping it true to how it was on screen. But then the fact that you like the red jammer in that sort of work in progress or unfinished state versus this, that is interesting. But I think this piece is one of those things where a Y-wing is a lot more complex in detail and a lot more chaotic. This is very, like, everything is mirrored, right?
Yeah.
Whatever's on the left is on the right and vice versa.
Right.
So everything is mirrored, and I think it's one of those things where, like you said, if you're posing it dynamically and the way it visually stands and displays, it's one of those things where it's much more noticeable unfinished.
Yes. And I'm sure I'm gonna, when I build this thing, right, and I got the head almost done, and I show it to my wife, right? Let's just say, and she's gonna be like, "Why didn't you finish it?" I know. Excuse me, I got a cold. I know she's gonna be like, "Why is it not finished?" And it's just like, then I'll have to explain. Like I'll be like, well, it's supposed to be like but why? Like she just, like, most people won't get it. Some people do. Some people are like I was surprised, Steve, when he first learned how Merlin he thought Merlin was gonna do one side blank like this and the other side. But I said, no, they're gonna include all the parts so you could do it mirrored, idealized, or true, right? And I was very surprised that Steve was like, oh, I definitely want to leave it the model, like with the writing on the side, and like, that surprised me. I thought for sure he would want a finished one.
Yeah, that was surprising. You're right.
It was, but maybe I shouldn't be, because he does like screen use, like his Vader helmet. Right, he had the idealized Vader helmet, the Novus one, but he sold it to get, a more screen accurate version of it, right? So, yeah, but what makes everybody right now want to do this particular model, right? It's weird. Like, I think about it sometimes, and I wonder to myself, like, why is everybody doing this model? Right.
Yeah.
And even us, like, well, we've been talking about it for a long time. We've been planning this for probably, I bought my kit like 2 years ago, a year and a half ago, and it sat in my box for a while. I was going to build it right away, but changed my mind because other things came up. But now, and like, okay, so here, do we want to mention this? Something cool about this that a lot of people probably don't know?
So yeah, where you see that shadow, that mark, sort of like removing a picture in a house that had smoke damage, or somebody who was a heavy smoker, you see that ghosted image once you remove it. That was actually a part that had fallen off. And it had fallen off so early on. So we all know a lot of these props had gotten damaged during the touring of the mom exhibitions, and the photo shoots for the books and the chronicles, and them being handled and coming in and out of the archives. But this, because of the way it was built and thrown together for such a quick shot, pieces were falling off during production or right after production. It's also why when you're going through the images, things look gooped together. They were actually melting under the stage light.
Like these here?
When they shot it. Yeah, you'll see it on the legs, you'll see it underneath. Things
Back
are all
here.
sort of melted and mended together, because a lot of this is scratch built with thin sheets of styrene mixed with greeblies. But that piece in the back, for a long time, I don't know who particularly discovered it, so I'm not sure who to give credit to, but it's actually a part of a 312B Ferrari. And it's interesting, right? Now, this is one of those cases where, do you put it on or do you leave it off? Because was it on there when it was on screen? Do we know? Did it fall off before it got on screen, and they just said, forget about it. Let's just leave it. Don't worry about fixing it. No one's going to see the back of it. You know what I mean?
I think it fell off while it was walking across screen.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I was walking across Hoth, it fell off. No, but here, okay. So I want to put this. I'm gonna put this on. Like I'm gonna put that part on, and it's just really just like taste. Like I said, like I'm probably gonna finish the other side because it's gonna drive me nuts. I know it's gonna.
Here's another thing you'll notice go up. So see how
Here.
the other side of the cheek, is unfinished. It was actually there. Look below the plate. There was actually one there that fell off. Can you?
Oh, right here, yeah.
It originally had the plate on it. And the plate came off.
Okay, but it doesn't have this part here, or does it? Like maybe did it come off?
It may have, because that glue's on pretty thin, so it may have. I can't tell, but I would like to think
Jason,
so.
think about where these spots are at. Okay, those are those latches that are on that piece. Possibly they might have been on here.
They would have left the mark right there.
Yeah, and there's a glue spot missing here. So okay, I don't feel so bad now. I'm putting it on. I don't care. Right there's the shadow. I never noticed it before. But this is a really interesting piece. Like this is just, it's not terribly difficult to build. I was like, we talked about it, okay, and gluing this box together for these kit parts to put on wasn't as hard as I thought it was going to be. You do have to sand it a lot, like file the edges and clean them up, but there are a lot of kits on here. I thought I had all the kits.
A lot of random kits.
Yes. I thought I'm missing this kit, mostly the stuff on the back here. I have the other pieces, but like I forgot I was missing this part. This is a little bit of a harder tank to get. And I know I have the other one up too. Where'd it go? Did I bring it up? Where'd you go? Let's bring up the other one. This one. Yeah. See, like I said, right here, see those buckles there? That's kind of like laid out how those paint marks are
where
missing.
they would be if they were to fall off. And again, another piece to easily fall off when you're handling it.
Oh yeah. It was a pain in the butt to glue on too. And here's that piece that is missing from that other side that was obviously there because there's a glue mark. There's a glue mark there. There's a missing paint part there. I never noticed that before, but then I haven't looked down past. I haven't dived into these legs very much yet because I don't have the legs yet. And when I do, then I'm gonna really jump into them and figure out what goes where. But like I said, so you and I are both working on this now. You've been working on it for a little while. I've kind of just started working on it because I had other projects I wanted to do. I'll tell you what, it's a fun one. It is absolutely a fun one.
Fun little fact, those I guess you'd call them toes. Those are actually spring mounted. So when the foot goes down, they can bend forward before the foot hits the ground.
Yeah.
And it's interesting that they marked it and it was unfinished and marked with the intention that it wasn't going to have a lot of screen time, if any. And yet details like that, they still took the extra step to make that like a spring action foot.
Right. Do you see this? Do you see this far from Death Star?
It was surprising he could in regards to
Steve.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That was a good one. It took me a second.
It was surprising, yeah. But yeah, once I get down to these toes, man, I'm a little sketchy on how they go together, so I'll be calling you a lot. Which I already have. I did download a couple of pictures of your build. Do you not want them to be shown, or do you want them?
No, you can show them now.
Okay, all right. Let me Let me get rid of this so that I don't share something that people don't want to see. Or
I was just holding off before because, as you know, I was building a couple, and
yeah,
it's just one of those things where people, well, is that mine? Is this, and I just didn't want to.
Yeah, I can't. I didn't download them into files this time because I had to spend some time with the wife before I came on. So, normally I would do a folder and so okay. Here's mine that I did recently, which I really ended up really liking, and it was kind of tough to actually send it out. But I did, knowing that I was going to build one myself, right? It's such a cool piece. It's I liked it a lot, even more than I thought I would, right? Nope, that's not it. So, this is mine. Like, it's really, if you, there on the RPF, there's a template that you can use to cut out the walls and the front and the top, and then you glue them together, and you just kind of like sand them, the edges, so and it's pretty much laid out. If you want to do one of these, it's not hard to find it on the RPF. It really isn't. So here's one of your builds, and listen, Jason, I gotta be honest with you. Your build.
Did I lose you?
Jason.
Hey, did I lose you, man?
No, I think it was my internet took a shit.
Yeah.
But I was saying that your builds are like, I've taken notice to your builds, and like they're very clean and very nice and very, but like your nails over here are just nasty. You gotta do something about that, brother.
That's paint, man. That's paint.
They're just nasty. You're nasty.
Come on, so, your nails aren't covered in paint and glue? Come on.
No, they're actually not. They're just
mine always are. My thumb still literally as we speak has black and white paint on it.
Mine are just, my cuticles are nasty and dry and hurt like hell because I don't do anything with my hands other than, I don't even put hand lotion on, and I work with my hands all day. So I got glue on my fingertips, so I don't know if I have any more fingerprints. Like if I committed a crime, I'd be good because I have so much glue stuck in my fingertips. So like, this beautiful, dude. This is really well done.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Even better than mine for sure. Like, I'm building it, and mine's great, but like yours is a lot more clean and a lot more.
I'm very meticulous.
You're very meticulous. Anal is the word, I should say, actually. But
I don't take offense to that.
No, that's funny. I don't mean that. I was just fucking with you. But oh, so you did finish this side. Look at that.
I did, yeah.
You did.
Well, because looking at the images, and this is the ones that aren't in the Chronicles book, you can see or almost see that these parts were potentially there and came off.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why I added them, with the understanding that they were possibly on there. I think I may have lost you again.
And the gray and the white and it's just, I've been using yours, to be honest. And you may be completely wrong and fuck up my whole model. So we'll see.
In what way? Sorry, I think the internet cut out.
Oh, come on, man.
No, I can hear you now. What were you saying?
I may have to reset it. Hopefully I don't have to. There's times at night where my internet sucks ass. I was saying how you do the black and the white and the gray and stuff, and it looks nice. So
yeah,
okay.
The contrast of priming. We explained. I think we were talking about this on the last group that I did with Steve when we were looking at the Bosch helmet. I feel like whenever I do a build, depending on the piece, doing variations of priming colors, contrasts of grays, helps me better understand the build when I'm reverse engineering it in my mind, and also if I'm like, because you have to temporarily put pieces in place, then they might come off after you're not, like some pieces may not permanently be on there. So it helps you better understand the process and the steps of like where you are, what needs to go back on, and where and when. So that's why I do the color contrast. A lot of people find it interesting, but it's not intentional for aesthetic purposes. It's just to help me as I go along better understand what I'm building and why.
I think it's beautiful. I love how it looks like this. Okay. But what I want to ask you though, okay, so you have black and gray in here and stuff. Do you go over it with a single color primer then before you paint it?
Yes. So once everything's on, then it'll just have a single coat prime, and then I'll start adding the base colors and the layers and all that.
Okay. Because I was just thinking about it the other day because I did spray mine black like this and started adding gray parts to it just so I can keep it like you said, more in order, more easily distinguished. But then I thought I'm gonna have to prime it over top because like you're gonna have different colors here now. If you go over this primer with the armor, what is it?
Yeah, if you just go if you just start with the base coats, yeah. But another reason for the black, another reason I didn't mean to cut you. Another reason for the black though is I took this trick from what they did with the Millennium Falcon. So with the walkers and some other ships, a lot of times people just paint the damage on or speckle the damage on.
Yeah.
But in certain areas, I know on the face and on the back of the head, that's how it's supposed to be. But in certain areas, I like the black being underneath because if I want to make like a little nick or a little, like just a little nick in the paint here and a little nick in the paint there, it looks like it was actual damage. So instead of painting the damage on, you actually have the black showing through the paint. And I like that idea. It gives a little bit more realism.
I did that with my X-Wing. I primed it black because I knew I was going to like gouge it some places. And
I remember that. Yeah.
Yeah. And like with the Y-Wing, okay, like I know that they why is my I know that they had black primer underneath it, right? But that also changes your color when you spray it. We've talked about this a bunch of times. I'm sure I'm repeating myself 100 times and people who are watching will be like, yeah, you've said this before. Okay. But like when you spray this with the gray, you're going to have like a darker color gray and then a lighter color gray and a even lighter color gray here, right?
Yeah.
It's kind of like, what do they call that? Pre-shading a little bit, almost like a lot of tank builders pre-shade a lot of their models where they go over the lines with a darker color and before they put their base cover on. So it shows like shadowing in depth, right? ILM didn't do that. They did not do that. But like I wanted to ask you that, whether you did do that in all one color then. Yeah. So, but yeah, like I was saying, like this is your work and you've shown me a whole bunch of pictures. Look at those sexy toes. Oh, there's that part.
There's that part, yeah. I remember before I got that kit, when I was working on this, I was so excited to get that piece. I went and found, how I do. I buy the sprues first. I got the sprue and found the piece, and it finally came in, and I just did it like a little kid. I ripped it up, ripped the package open, pulled the piece off, and ran right over and slapped it on.
Yep. Now you've made 2, right? You've made.
I made 3 total.
You made 3 total. Okay. I thought I put some of mine in, but I guess I didn't. It's okay. Yours are nicer looking. So yeah, like this.
Well, this is a fun stage. It's nice to see it like this because you're seeing the different layers of stacked styrene and cuts and
I'm gonna blow it up.
Piece. Yeah,
I'm gonna blow it up. Let's just put it on desktop.
And speaking of why you're blowing up the image, speaking of how you said like depreciating, putting colors underneath, I wonder if I forget if it was the A-Wing, but John was working on something, and he had pre-primed it with Molotov gold paint.
Yeah, that was the Cloud Car.
Cloud Car. It was a Cloud Car. Yeah.
Yep. So yeah, this is a beginning stage. This is even before I filed the edges, or I did a little bit. Yeah, I did actually. You glue the box together, and then you file all these edges, and the template actually has like it looks like this actually, where you put the top kit part on. And then like this is a plastruct half, I don't know what they call it, a circle that you glue on both sides. But yeah, this is a kind of an interesting look into steps and procedures of how it's made. Like in all these,
this is a great one. This step right here is a great one to see because you're looking at it in its infancy, but you're also seeing, the ideology behind it.
Chris had asked here before I get too far, what are your thoughts on the upcoming Merlin models ATST? I'll let you handle this. I want to just do something real quick. Go ahead.
I don't know. So I without getting into too much detail, I think the Merlin models ATST is probably going to be one of the better offerings, if not the best offering to date. Nobody else has put one out yet, and I think there is a version through Sci-Fi Studio Scale Models that actually did come out really well. It's really well done, but there's a difference between a 3D printed kit and a kit you build, and I don't want to get into all that, but overall the Merlin models one, with the metal armature, stop motion body, you could pose it just like it was done in the movie. The one in the movie is on a metal base, a metal body, and I think the level of accuracy and detail that they got and how far they've gone to achieve that level of accuracy and detail is going to be second to none. I think it's going to be a great kit. I think people are going to be really, really happy with it.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's going to be one. I mean, you and I both know it's incredibly accurate. And people are going to be really happy with this thing. I honestly believe that. And honestly, you're going to be able to see how it's built. Okay, like there are people who want to scratch build this, like from styrene, and then there are people who don't, right? So, and there's nothing wrong with that, right? So, but you'll also be able to build this thing and be like, see the kit parts that you're gluing in spots in the places that they're supposed to be. And I don't know, is all the parts that he's sending, are they going to be the correct shape, or do you have to file anything down?
Oh, that's interesting. So I think everything is okay. So with this, the thing that makes this model so interesting, the reason why I'm focusing on it tonight, guys, is because you have things like the Falcon, you have things like the Slave One, and they're extremely complex in their own right, and they have just magnificent levels of creativity and artwork in them. But this is more of a smaller, simplified piece. But at the end of the day, a lot of the pieces on here are one-off parts, rare, parts, one piece from this kit, one piece from that kit. But some of these parts were larger, more obscure parts that were cut down, not just from like 3 inches to 2 inches, but they were cut into different shapes. And you had squares that were cut into rectangles and circles that were cut into triangles. And that's just, an example, not an actuality, but that's what makes it interesting, right? So I don't think, for example, the Morse cow, right? I don't think you're going to get the full back. It would be interesting though if they attempted something like that for the process and the fun of the build. But I think everything is going to be pre-cut and pre-formatted, so it's ready to build, ready to go. So you don't have to do any additional work. And I think that's what they're trying to attempt, is kind of like what the larger AT-AT, which is, you don't really have to do all the legwork, all the cutting, sanding, trimming, etc. Even though in some cases, like on a kit like this specifically, for the more ambitious builder, it might be fun. But I just think, it's one of those things like, how do you separate? You gotta kind of look at it as.
So I'm gonna bring up some pictures and to help explain that a little bit better. Let's get back to desktop, and I'll bring this little bad boy up so we can share and talk about that. And hopefully people aren't bored to shit. So speaking of, let's say this Matilda piece, right?
Mm-hmm.
It is part of the top hull, the top of the tank. There's a whole section of this thing cut off, right? And you file it and you get it to the point where it's supposed to be. And even here on this piece actually goes down like this, and you file it down to get these angles, right? So like, I don't know, I'm sure a lot of people do realize this, but when there's a lot of when you get a kit, you're not like pulling them out and saying, oh yeah, this is how it looks on the ship. Like, they don't just take the kit and pop it right on. Sometimes they do, like these parts they do, and this part.
Yeah, those are just broken off the screws and popped on. But like on the top, those are much larger pieces cut down to get that piece out. Yeah, to get that piece from.
Yeah. And like the piece back here, okay. This is just the next step in like, these are kept, just kind of what jump on top of what we showed before. Oh, here's a better picture of that. So this piece right here, right? That's a SU-100, and it's like, I bought the kit just for that piece, right?
But then when these two pieces are together, glued, filed, and painted, they look like they were a single three-bleed or single kit piece.
Yes.
But they're two complete different pieces, two complete different kits cut down from much larger pieces.
Much larger pieces. And it takes time, effort, and obsession to look at this part right here and say, okay, where is that from? Where, what kit is that from? And it's especially hard to find things that are filed down, because you're looking at a kit list, a kit scanner, or even an open kit, and you're like looking for that part. You're looking for this hatch, right? You're looking for this, but
your mind's not thinking that you're looking for a giant piece,
Right. You have to train your eye to actually see the smaller details of a bigger kit part, right? And I'll give you a perfect example. So on the slave one, on the top, there's this little tiny piece. It's like this big. Okay. It's a flat piece. It's maybe a half an inch, and it's on right below the window, right? I was told what that part came from. Okay. I'm going through this box. I'm like, where the hell is this thing? Right. This was very early in my modeling hobby. And I'm going through. I'm like, this thing is not in here, right? Here, it's like this long ass piece, like this big, that they just caught like this little half-inch piece out of the very, not even the perfect middle, like slightly over to the left a little bit. And it's not, there's two pieces that are almost identical, okay? But there's little tiny variations in the piece that you need compared to the mirror piece. You follow what I'm saying? Where you can't use the other mirrored piece. You have to use that specific kit part, right? Do you follow what I'm saying?
Yeah, no, totally.
Okay. Yeah. So like, if you had the other one, you could not, we could, but
it wouldn't make sense to use it.
It wouldn't. Yeah. My son is calling me. I'm just gonna text him. He's been calling me a lot. He's the one who likes to. He's dying. He thinks he's dying, but he has a cold. So, like, I don't know. It's just kind of thought we'd throw this out there and like show steps and how these things are made, right?
Well, they're even areas like this top hatch, right? The two-tone piece up top. So that piece doesn't just rest in the middle of there perfectly. You actually have to put a razor underneath it and lift it. And it's all these things that, that make it, that's the intrigue, right? This sort of reverse engineering and understanding of the why and the how and what made them think that way. Because when you look at the finished piece on screen or in a book or you buy a toy, it all just makes sense and goes together so perfectly. And you just accept it for what it is. It's just a Falcon, it's an X-Wing, it's a TIE fighter. It just is what it is. And
Right.
you accept that because it goes together like peanut butter and jelly, right? It's just perfect harmony. But
Right.
the fact that these guys are able to do this, and that's why I think there's such a, Star Wars has such a large fan base for a number of reasons. It's a caveat of reasons. But the deeper hardcore fans that live, eat, sleep, and breathe Star Wars, it's that fascination and that sort of real world element and the fact that it's lived in and used and everything is relatable and there's a reference of association to that world. There's something so unique
Jason,
about it that no other movie or story has an element form.
I'll be completely honest with you. Okay. This is complete honesty. I like Star Wars. Okay. I like it. But I actually like Game of Thrones way better. Okay. I'm probably going to get crucified, but I like the story of Game of Thrones way better. But it's
storytelling
this kind
perspective,
of it's this kind of stuff. It's this nostalgia stuff. It's like the vintage figures that I grew up on. It's building these models that is what keeps my interest more so than the stories. Like I like them. Don't get me wrong. But this is what really gets my goat. You know what I mean? This is I could eat this up all day long. I could talk about this all night. We do. You and I talk about this all day long. I mean, my wife thinks I talk. Well, she's right. I talk to you way more than I talk to her on the phone. So, but yeah, I put the Macquarie piece in our thumbnail, right? And that's funny because that Macquarie piece, I took notice. The artwork, it's the ESB chicken walker in the Endor scene. It's just kind of struck me as cool and different, is why I used it. But I did want to talk about the ATST a lot because you and I were building it a lot, and there's a lot of makers making it. So, but like after this, what is like NYC just came out with the Y-wing, right? And it looks good. It looks really good. And I'm just wondering, like, is that how it all starts out? Like one person makes it and then another person makes it, another person makes it. So
I don't know. It's still I still don't know why there's continuity with the bevy of ships that there is to choose from. I'm not sure why someone mentions a potential release or pre-order a project, then another, and not that there's like 10 people in line, but 2 or 3 at any given time tend to make the same ships within a few months of each other.
Right.
And it's not just this. It's happened on 3 or 4 occasions now. And maybe it's just like you said, maybe it's just piqued interest. Like Robin had mentioned, and Aaron had mentioned, like maybe it's just one of those things. But then going back to like the mass replica days, right? I know EFX was doing backdoor custom orders on most of their stuff and only mass released the tie and the X, but even those didn't get finished. The runs didn't get finished. Master Replicas, they didn't finish their runs either. So although the plates are numbered to, let's say, 200, 500, 700, they didn't get finished because the interest wasn't necessarily there. So it's great to see that it's come as far as it has, and despite people making things alongside each other, I think it's great to see.
Jason, I'm building the ATST, right? And it's complex. It's not complex, but it's a lot of thought into the pieces that are cut. Listen, could you imagine doing this? Like, honestly, I can't see myself doing something like this. Oh, my damn internet sucks tonight. Is it bad, Jason?
It's choppy. Yeah, it's sometimes it's cutting out completely, but right now I can still hear you. This piece was actually worked on by 7 or 8 guys at once, and they'd spent a couple hours on one section, and then so one person's style didn't take over or become too noticeable. Every couple of hours they would shift positions and move to different parts. So there would be so there won't be too much consistency in style and approach to how it was done. But yeah, this
So
was
John was telling me he's building this right now, right? And he was like, dude, it's freaking crazy how, let's just say this section right here. Okay, this little piece right here. That is part of a bigger piece, and they cut it down just to this little 1/4-inch piece and stuck it on here. Like, how do you figure all that out? Like, I think I'm getting better with IDing stuff, but like just to only find this little round dimple on a flat piece of something, and then that becomes ID'd. Like, that's a whole nother different obsession than I have.
well, that's interesting, right? The ID thing. Because whenever like sometimes I find myself getting to a point where I'm like, wow, I can now look at a piece and say, hey, this came from that kit. Hey, this came from this kit. But then I get very humbled very quickly when I look at, like what you just pulled up, and I realize, wow, I don't know anything.
No.
Because there's just so much more to it that meets the eye.
There's another ship that I absolutely love. The home one. I love this thing. I love the paint work. I love the kit parts.
The paint work on this is amazing.
Oh, it's freaking gorgeous. I can't imagine how. And they did all this work for a split second. Like, that's got to be frustrating. Look at all these kit parts down here, and all of this work on this paint, and they literally just maybe in the background you didn't really even see this thing up close.
No. And I found it interesting. One of the behind the scenes discussions, I think it's Grant McCune. I could be wrong, but he's talking about having worked on a piece for 3 months.
Yeah, it was the transport.
The transport, morning, noon, and night. You're basically like in a relationship with this thing. And I don't mean that like humorously, like I mean that in a literal sense. Like you wake up to this thing, you go to bed to this thing, and you're doing everything with the in between, and you're doing that for 8, 10, 12 weeks, and then it's on screen for all of 2.5 seconds, and you don't see any of the detail, any of the work, any of the color. It just passes by the screen. It's like that's gotta
kill.
Yeah, there's a certain relationship that you start to build with your pieces, right? And it's got to be an interesting thing psychologically and emotionally to just kind of be like gutted like that. Like, and it's not even like feeling cheated or feeling slighted. It's just that, wow, I put so much work into this particular section and it didn't get to be seen or appreciated. It's almost like, hanging a Picasso.
It's almost like you work really, really hard throughout the whole year and you don't get a bonus.
Yeah, exactly. Or it's like it's like hanging a Picasso, but putting a sheet over it and only exposing an inch of it, and you have to wonder what the rest of it looks like.
This is something maybe one day. I love this thing. Yeah, I'm working on the Sandcrawler right now, right? And also, it's funny because I'm building a lot. I'm building a lot of things, and I'm painting, not really painting much right now. There's long spaces in between when I'm painting stuff, because I take so much time now to build things, especially scratch build stuff. A resin kit, you got to clean it up, but it generally goes together the way it's a little easier to put together. But when you're scratch building something, the build process could take months, or depending on how much time you spend on it. And then the painting is the quick and easy part, which was always bizarre. It's bizarre to me now. I don't know why the blockade runner was never something that really thrilled me that much. Lots of people love it. I understand it, but
yeah, it's not my cup of tea. I got nothing against it, but it's not something I'm writing home about.
No, it's not something I'm jumping up ahead to do.
I mean, it's
okay. So see these black spots, right? Those are probably. What do you think? You think those are gouged, or are they painted on? Those are painted on.
Some are painted. Some look gouged. I can't tell what my glasses.
Yeah, getting old, man.
Mm-hmm.
Getting old. Okay, another thing that is interesting about ID. Look at this picture. Look at this right here. Can you see that?
Yeah, the pilot, John Dykstra.
Yeah, with no shirt on.
No shirt on.
Yeah,
I love it.
70s haircut. I never knew that. That's freaking phenomenal. Wow. Look at that.
Well, remember I was showing you the picture. I think you were at Celebration. I was texting you over that picture before you went to the panel, and I was like, dude, check out these close-ups of the Star Destroyer. And one was like a sinking man, like mixed in with all those parts that was like getting pulled under. And dude, they went ham and stuck all kinds of silly stuff in there that just because who's gonna see it?
What's really cool about this even is that it's a little cutout or something because damn it, my internet went again. You there again? I'm back.
Yep.
There's a little cutout because there's a shadow in it. The light is making their shadow because it's a piece of this. Look.
That's a fun. It's like a how you doing picture. That's funny.
Yeah. Oh, that actually makes me change my ship. What I mentioned was at Celebration, I had gone to a panel with the 4ILM guys, and they were with the prequels. Okay, so you and I have these little tidbits here, these little Easter eggs that are all over the place in the old prequel, the original trilogy stuff. I asked them. I stood up and I got in line and I asked the question. I was like, all these model makers used to put like little men like this or little army men in weird places and asked them if they ever did that. And one did. One said something. I don't exactly remember how this. He said something about, I think on, is it Utapau or, yeah, I think it was Utapau. There's a toilet somewhere in on one of the models, like a little miniature toilet. But the other two were like, no, we didn't do anything. We didn't want to we were worried for our job. We didn't want to lose our job. We were kind of like, Star Wars, we got to keep, everything by the book, but these guys.
Well, that was during the prequels, but the
yes.
OT, they just went hand. I mean, not everybody, but like the Falcon has, that most of them wrote their names on there, and the AT-ATs have some sayings on the feet and things like that.
Yeah. Oh, there's a bunch of spruce kits. Yeah. Well, I think we went long enough. Do you? I mean,
I could talk about this stuff forever. I would like to touch back on remember we had that one show where we talked about what came first, the painting on the model, then we realized, well, wait a minute.
Okay.
He couldn't have come up with like, hey, this kit part, let me paint it, and then these guys, they built the models first and then he used it, and it was kind of like, like it was kind of like, the whale, like why didn't I think of that? Right? Because once you realize that it's such an aha moment, like duh.
We had a whole show on that.
We did, and I think that might be something fun to revisit when we have John or another guest on at a later date, just because I found so many more images, and I've even found like updated ones, but they're not just before and afters. They're like 3 or 4 variations of reworks of, okay, let's not do this ship. And then George's like, well, maybe we'll go with this one. Nah, that's not quite right. And then it gets painted out and repainted. And they didn't paint the entire picture over. Like Ralph just went in and erased the ship and repainted the ship.
Well, here's a prime example, Jason. This picture was done, 3 times?
Yes.
It was done like this, which was the original Millennium Falcon, right? And then it was done in a more close to the well-known Millennium Falcon. It was more, I don't know. Jason Eaton made one a couple years ago. Beautiful model, like just freaking stunning. I don't even know what is that. That's not the Rob. That's not the Joe Johnston. That's not considered a Joe Johnston one, is it? Is it?
It might
one
be.
that,
Yeah, I know what you're trying to talk about. I'm not
yeah.
quite sure who
And
who takes claim over it, but yeah.
and then they redid this painting 3 exact times because they put 3 different Millennium Falcons in. And like you said, Macquarie's not going to come up with, these kit parts that are on here on his own. He's going to look at said model that has the kit parts on, right? So I really think that the models came first, and Macquarie painted them with the model in front of him.
Yeah, it's like
But
an oil painter painting a bowl of fruit or a
right,
woman. You're
right.
using your subject or your study, and that's what you're painting off of.
But the
Here's a good interesting
funny
question.
thing is, Jason, though, before you say something, before we get off this, Macquarie's kind of considered the concept artist, that he came up with these things, through his paintings, which is, I don't want to
Incorrect
knock it.
in a lot of ways.
It's incorrect. Yeah, it's very incorrect.
It
So
was
I'm sorry.
definitely no, you're right. That was a good one. It was definitely a collaborative effort across the board. But I was
Yeah,
saying, Dylan here asks an interesting question. I'll part answer it, but don't take this the wrong way, Dylan, because it's not how I mean it. So he says, has any model maker such as Phil Tippett ever commented on the passion or the following that their Star Wars models have? First off, Phil wasn't a model maker. He did more like the Tauntauns and pieces like that. He did a
creatures.
lot, yeah, creatures and a lot of the stop motion. So when you see him handling the AT-AT and the walkers and things like that, he's doing the stop motion, but he wasn't a builder of the models. But to further answer your question, it's one of those things where now that the models have and still images, resources are readily available, etc., appreciated. I think it originally, because we had talked about this with other members in the community and even some of the guys from ILM. At first, it was one of those things where because they weren't the actors or actresses, they found it kind of strange. Like if somebody wanted an autograph or a signature, it wasn't
Yeah, they did.
like it wasn't a bad thing. They weren't like rude. It was just one of those things like, well, why do you want my autograph? Not in a bad way, but it was like me, like what did I do that was so special? They weren't quite understanding what people were appreciating or enjoying or wanting from that aspect. And it's funny because now today it's a thing where a a lot of collectors, I would say, prefer the signatures of the model makers, the creature makers, the designers, the creators over the actors and actresses, right? I mean, it's one
Yeah,
of those. I mean, at least
yeah,
in a collection. Like, yeah, everybody loves a good Harrison Ford signature or Carrie Fisher, Mark Hamill. I 1000%. But when you see, when you're scrolling through the hyperdrive and you're seeing all these amazing collections, like those type of collections, primarily, those guys really enjoy the signatures of like a Joe Johnson or a Warren Peterson. So to answer your question, Dylan, yeah, these guys have definitely gotten to a point where um, the passion and the follow for their work and the intrigue and the fact that people have gone to the lengths to figure out how they made these things and you know why they made them this way. I think there's a strong appreciation and just a lot of flattery and overall wholeheartedness there that these guys you know it was a lot of work. And
yeah,
also we see it as Star Wars is Star Wars, and it's also this George Lucas is a billionaire, but what people don't take into consideration, and I use this as it's kind of like a car or a watch or a piece of artwork, right? Like, all right, everybody, I'm going to use this as an example because everybody knows the name Banksy. So
I don't.
like, yeah, you do. You don't? Banksy or
No,
Basquiat? All right. So
no.
when a piece of Banksy art sells at auction for $1 million, Banksy doesn't get any of that money. He only got the $2,500 he originally sold it for. Okay. So that $1 million goes to the secondary market, the buyer, the seller, etc. So same thing with Star Wars. You have somebody like Brian Muir who pretty much, sculpted Darth Vader, or you have Lauren Peterson who built the Sandcrawler. But this was just a job. These guys were getting paid whatever, whatever they
Yeah,
contract with at the time, however many dollars an hour or however many, oh, we need you for 3 months, we'll give you 20 grand. Like, there was no, and they didn't get points on the movie or points on the back end, or none of that was a thing back then. There was
No.
nothing to negotiate. So, it's definitely gonna be one of those things today where people like us, the level of the fans in general, the appreciation that we have as collectors, um, it's definitely gonna be flattering. It's something that they've worked on. Some of these guys are 60, 70, 80 years old. They worked
Yeah.
on it when they were our age, 20s
Yeah.
and 30s. So can you imagine half a century going by and people still admiring your work? I mean, that's
And
gotta be.
asking you detailed questions that I'm sure they have
They have no.
no idea. Like,
One of the I love that you brought that up because I love Tom Spina has some of the best stories where because we act like because we get so obsessed with this stuff and we can recite every word and we know every scene. Again, this was a job for these guys 40, 50 years ago, and we're like, what paint did you use on this and more part? I don't fucking know. Like, that was a Tuesday afternoon. That
I
was a
threw some brown and some orange and some red together, and I can't tell you what the ratio
yeah.
is
It was
or what
like that was a Tuesday afternoon in August, 1977. Like I don't remember that.
some of them probably don't even remember doing it.
Doing
Like,
it, and
yeah,
that's no different than if I said to you, Chris, what were you doing on January 2nd, 1992? You don't know.
dude, I don't remember what I did yesterday, let alone, you know,
But like
night.
it's an interesting thing to put into perspective. We just
Yeah, it is.
assume that they know because like here it is in front of our face, right? I mean, I'm sure
Mhm.
it jogs a little bit of the memory, but for the most part, there's like they don't remember every little last detail.
Well, here's the other side of that coin. Okay, so I think there's like a lot of people think that they. Okay, let's just say Star Wars. Star Wars, this probably didn't happen, but after Star Wars, Empire and Jedi, they started writing shit down. Like, like
Yes.
they knew what kit part came from what, and because a lot of times they had to replicate. Okay, and they can't like make them look too different. Um, so somewhere, some in one of those archives, they have books and books and books saying, "All right, this is from the Ferrari 312B, like this part here." Like, they have that shit. It maybe not on Star Wars because it was low budget and they didn't know what the hell was going to happen. Blah blah blah. But once they knew, after that, it was good. They had to keep, and they started archiving this stuff and keeping this stuff um, under wraps. Then they did. There's a lot more knowledge there than you think. Than there really, most people think there is. But like the 70s, like in the original, yeah, most of those people. Let's remember, it was the 70s in California. Most
Hmm.
of them were probably not quite right in the exact frame of mind, chemically enhanced. You know what I mean? Um,
Oh,
like
there was
most,
definitely some artistic endeavor there.
yeah. I mean, most musicians, their music is made while they're half stoned out. You know what I mean? So that they did too. So you'd have to be to make some of these things up. But um, yeah, I also, I mean, that was a good show that we had, the one with the Macquarie.
Yeah.
And I remember even Rob was getting in on the conversation as well from RS. We were talking to him through some messages online, and he kind of had that kind of revelation too at the same time we did, you know. Um, and I don't know if it was because we did that show where we showed a lot of Macquarie stuff. Um, oh, dude, look at this thing. This is pretty weird, isn't it?
Yeah.
That's bizarre. I never took notice of that thing.
Hmm.
I like going through this Chronicles book. I don't do it often enough. This is the vehicles book. Is there that Macquarie picture in here with the real
Money.
Millennium Falcon?
No one else I'm starting to find really interesting, Chris. So when
Was
they
it?
did the life-size scale ones, right? The X-wing, the Y-wing, the snow speeder, the Falcon.
Mm-hmm.
This is the crazy part. If you look at them and look at them in detail, the guys who worked in the wood shop and cut these pieces to make, a one-to-one scale vehicle, they had to look at the model kit parts and replicate them to life-size scale. And some of them are pretty
Yeah.
spot on.
Yeah. Oh, here's Jason Eaton's Macquarie Falcon.
Yeah,
It's the first thing that popped up. I mean, that's gorgeous. That's gorgeous. He is exceptionally talented. I marvel at his creative genius as well. But what I'm looking for is this picture here. I'm probably not gonna be able to make it bigger. Yeah, there we go.
Mm-hmm.
Same picture, different Falcon.
And if you look closely to the surroundings, he didn't completely repaint it or paint it. He used the original painting and just gessoed out the ship and repainted the ship.
Let's see if we can find the third one, which is the screen used Falcon. Well, here's a good picture to compare. Yeah.
Yep.
Yep. I find that interesting. I don't know if other people do, but I do.
The one with the one with the TIE pilots, the background ship, that changes like 3 or 4 times too, doesn't it?
Which one?
I forgot. I don't know the name of the image. It's just
Did
the
I
TIE
show
pilots.
Did I show it already?
It's, I think, the Y-wings behind them.
Oh yes. The it goes from the Cantwell Y-wing to the current Y-wing.
Yeah, well, I think it changes 2 or 3 times.
Yeah. Let's see if I can bring that up. Google Images. Yeah, so we got this one, which is the Cantwell version, right?
Yep.
And then the same picture. Well, not necessarily the exact same picture, but you get the point.
Mm-hmm.
There. It's
And
funny, isn't it?
look at the pilot. He's the same pilot that you see in all the Joe Johnson storyboard drawings and the X-wing.
It's also the X-wing pilot too.
X-wing pilot, yeah.
Yeah. Now here's kit parts. Those are
kit parts. Those are Ferrari kit parts.
Are they Ferrari or are they C-Lab?
There might be a mixture of both.
I think those are C-Lab. I might be wrong.
Really?
But like I said, you have the two of the same pictures right there. Well, not exactly the same, but you know what I mean.
Yeah, close enough. He made a change at one of that. Yeah. But there's a few like that where as the ship got updated. Because there's even 2 variations of the Cantwell model that got graduated a bit.
I think this is what really like started me thinking down that process was these 2 Y-wing paintings. Because there's no doubt about it. That's the Cantwell Y-wing. It's plain as day. Okay.
No, it's interesting, Chris. Look at that scene. Okay. Look at that picture.
Yeah.
Look at that scene. Now, just imagine if this was the Star Wars we got.
Yeah.
Do you think it would have the same feel and the same?
No, I do not. Yeah, this is very much like Space 1999 looking.
World War II meets Space 1999. You're right.
Yeah, very
like 70s Astro World type.
Yeah. George Jetson, almost. Look at this van back there. You see that van?
Oh, transport, yeah.
A little Volkswagen Bug of
VW transport.
VW. Yeah. But yeah, this kind of tells me that he was looking at models as he's drawing these. There's no doubt in my mind. All right. Well, I have to answer this. My son is calling me for the 500th time. I think we did good. Hour and a half. What do you think?
Yeah.
We're good.
Yeah.
Fun little. I hope people. I honestly, I hope people enjoyed these model videos. If you don't, we enjoy them. So, like I told you, he calls me 100 times.
Real quick, I just want to answer Dylan's questions.
Go ahead.
Recently begun getting into the gritty details and stuff. Yeah, Dylan, we all start somewhere, man. If there was a time where I was so green, I had, other than being a fan of the movies, I didn't know one thing from the other and had no clue. And there's still a ton of things I don't know a lot about. But that's the fun part, right? Is just the learning process and going down that rabbit hole because you enjoy the movies and the story for what it is, but then you get to enjoy all that went into it and everything that took place, to make it come to life. And that's where things get really interesting and really intriguing. And yeah, it's a deep dive, man, because it never really ends. There's just so much stuff to get into and learn and understand that it makes it that much more exciting. And one thing you'll notice is you start to watch the movies differently. One of our group members, Steve, he had mentioned recently that he'll now watch the movie and start to spot different things and see different things that he never noticed before that were just, very passive, very arbitrary, because there was no reason to focus in on them. So you start to notice things like that, and it's fun. It is. It really is a lot of fun. And the Disney Light Magic documentary, yeah, there was some interesting things in there, but I think again, it's a matter of differentiating the diehards versus like, you know, just the fans who aren't so much into the collecting. The guys who are hardcore into the collecting and study this stuff day in day out, there's nothing really, you know, too new or shocking in there. But at the end of the day, it's always a great watch. It's always fun to hear about the, how things were made and how they went about it, and even the build of the cameras, and they just had to invent everything to make this movie, from audio to
Mm-hmm.
computers to the Dijkstra flex. Like, they had to reinvent the whale to make Star Wars happen, and that's why it stands out in a way that no other movie has or will ever again, because it just made history in and of its own right. um, but yeah, it's great stuff, man, and it's good to see you join us tonight. And I hope you join us for some additional
Yeah,
chats.
man. Thanks for the comments. We really appreciate them. We like
Yeah,
answering comments. Um, Group therapy, it's a little hard for us to answer comments because we're kind of like going through a bunch of stuff, and there's 4 talking heads. Um, and but like these kind of shows, we really enjoy comments and questions, and you know, like I've said before, we're not experts. We're just kind of giving you our own opinion and what we know a little bit of. Um, but we
always
really
learning,
appreciate.
man. Always learning.
Always learn. Like I'm like I can't soak up enough of this stuff. It's pretty bad. Excuse me. It's pretty bad actually. It's kind of gets in the way of my day sometimes even. So
Oh yeah, man. When that bug bites you, it's
oh,
whether
oh
it's
yeah.
like, I remember getting bit by the hot toy bug, and I just couldn't get enough of them. And then it's like,
Mm-hmm.
or the vintage, or the yeah. I mean, there's so many elements. There's so many different things to dip your toes into, and that's the great part, right? There's no right or wrong way to approach being a fan and getting into collecting, and or even just watching. I mean, for over, even though I've been collecting for 20 years, there's a period where for 5 or 6 years I didn't collect, and I just stood on the sidelines, watching and just checking out the scene and seeing what was going on, and I didn't have my hands in anything. I just kind of
Yeah.
took a step back and enjoyed it for what it was. But yeah, it's good stuff, man. So yeah, thank you. Like Chris said, thanks for participating, and it
Yeah, we
makes it
really
more.
appreciate it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I do have to get off. I got a sick kid who calls me a million times. um, even though he's 19. It's okay though. But yeah, thanks for joining us, guys. And we're going to probably try to get John on next week sometime during the morning um, to discuss something that's going on with him, and maybe even get a guest eventually in the near future. Somebody kind of that Jason and I would love to talk to. Hopefully other people would love to hear what he has to say as well.
Yeah,
but I really appreciate everybody in the comments, and it was, we got a lot of comments this time compared to the last two, because we got to just plan ahead a little better. That's all your fault, not mine. Thanks, John. Really appreciate it. Yeah, if you liked it, give us a comment. Give us I'm not going to say it. Don't smash that. Whatever.
Smash that like button and give us a thumbs up.
Smash your wife, not the like button. That's what I'm going to say from now on. Good night, guys. Thank you.
All right. Good night, guys. Thanks for joining.